The road stretched endlessly beneath Taehyung's wheels, streetlights blurring past like ghosts in the night. He kept his feet firm on the accelerator, the silence in the car deafening except for the occasional hum of the tires against asphalt. His jaw was tense, brows furrowed. He couldn't shake the voice that had summoned him back. Taehyung, come back home, he gritted his teeth, fingers clenching the steering wheel so hard they ached. It had been years since he left that place behind, years since he turned his back on the lineage and legacy his father tried so hard to force onto him. But this time, they had played a different card, his mother's health. He snorted, more bitter than amused. The phone sat beside him on the passenger seat, screen dark now, but earlier it had flashed his father's name. It wasn't concern that brought him back, it was manipulation. They knew how to pull the strings. He rolled down the window and let the cold night air slap his face. A half-burnt cigarette fell from his fingers, the ember trailing sparks as it disappeared behind him. That brief moment of rebellion felt pointless now. Taehyung wasn't just a man driving home. He was being dragged back into a life he never wanted. Not as Kim Taehyung, the person, but as Kim Taehyung, the successor. As the mansion came into view, his stomach twisted. It looked just like it had all those years ago, pristine, imposing, and cold. Each step up the grand staircase carved into his memory, each memory stained with pressure, rules, and sacrifice. He parked the car, stepping out into the gravel path that crunched beneath his shoes. The sky above was still, stars hidden behind thick clouds, as if the universe itself wanted no part of what was about to happen. He pushed open the doors to the grand residence. The inside was lit with warm lights and fragrant with floral arrangements, but something in the air felt suffocating, like a cage dressed in silk. And then, he saw him. A young man, delicate, pale, wrapped in ivory fabric, standing quietly in the middle of the hall. He held a bouquet in his hands, fingers trembling slightly. His head was bowed, his frame small under the heavy air of formality. Taehyung blinked, his steps slowing as he took in the scene. His parents stood beside the boy, their expressions unreadable, but satisfied. He didn't need to ask. He already knew. "Mr. Kim, you made it just in time. They're waiting inside," the words struck him like ice water. "Taehyung, so that's why you wanted me back?" There was no illness. His mother's sigh was soft, rehearsed. "Mrs. Kim, it was necessary, Taehyung. This is a pivotal day for the family. We didn't think you'd come if we told you the truth." He could barely contain the fury building in his chest. His eyes drifted again to the boy, still standing silently like he was afraid to breathe too loudly. "Taehyung, you can't be serious." "I'm not going through with this," Mr. Kim's tone dropped, stern and immovable. "Mr. Kim, everything's already arranged. The guests have arrived. The ceremony is moments away. All you have to do is take your place." Taehyung turned away for a moment, trying to calm the storm inside him. The urge to leave, to run, was overwhelming. But when he glanced again at the boy in the center of it all, so still, so tense, something inside him shifted. He recognized that expression. He had worn it once too. "Taehyung, who is he?" His mother gave a gentle smile, but her eyes were sharp. "Mrs. Kim, he's the one chosen for you. From today, he will be your partner." Taehyung's throat felt dry. Everything about this felt like a trap, a decision made behind closed doors, sealed with golden ink and family names. Yet the boy wasn't looking at him with expectation or hope. He looked afraid, powerless. Taehyung inhaled slowly. He didn't want this. Not the wedding. Not the legacy. But perhaps the boy didn't want it either. And somehow, that made all the difference. Taehyung stood there, rooted to the spot, as the weight of his father's words settled heavily in the air. He glanced back at the boy in white, whose tear-filled eyes were still fixed on the floor, too afraid to look up. His trembling hands gripped the bouquet so tightly, it was as though it might shatter at any moment. A strange pang of guilt gnawed at Taehyung's chest. The boy was younger than him, fragile-looking, almost too delicate to be thrust into this situation. His heart tightened in a way he hadn't expected, but the anger that had surged through him only moments before quickly rose again. This wasn't his life. It was a prison. He looked at his father, then at his mother, both standing expectantly as if the entire thing had been planned for months. His father's cold gaze never wavered, the quiet authority in his posture demanding obedience. It was clear that nothing, not even his son's protests, would stop the wheels from turning. Taehyung's voice came out low, tinged with disbelief. Taehyung, you expect me to go through with this? You really think I can just stand here and pretend this isn't happening? This is a joke. Mr. Kim's face remained impassive, his voice unwavering. Mr. Kim, it's not a joke, Taehyung. It's the reality of our family. You know this. You always knew this day would come. The words cut through him like a blade. Taehyung had always known this was coming, but knowing didn't make it any easier. He had spent years running away, seeking solace in the most distant corners of the world, trying to outrun the shackles his parents had placed on him at birth. The life they had planned for him, the wife, the heir, the empire, had never been his dream. But his father's words were a silent reminder that he had no choice. Not anymore. He turned back toward the boy, who was still standing there like a porcelain figure, unmoving, unaware of the war raging in Taehyung's mind. Taehyung found himself staring at him, trying to process what he was feeling. He wasn't sure if it was sympathy or anger, but something about the boy's stillness unsettled him. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. Taehyung, what's your name? The boy flinched at the sound of his voice, his shoulders stiffening, but he didn't look up. He could feel the boy's nervousness radiating through the air, a heavy tension that seemed to suffocate the entire room. Mrs. Kim, as always, was quick to speak up. Mrs. Kim, his name is Jungkook. He comes from a prestigious family, one that will align perfectly with ours. You know this, Taehyung. His family has always been a loyal ally, Jungkook. The name floated in the air between them, unfamiliar and distant. It didn't mean anything to Taehyung, but he could sense the weight it held, both in the room and in his life. Taehyung took a slow step forward, his gaze fixed on the boy now. Jungkook didn't move, didn't respond. His quiet sobs were muffled, almost inaudible, but they struck Taehyung like a physical blow. This wasn't a celebration, despite the lavish decorations, the expensive flowers, the gold-lined chandeliers. This was a forced union. A contract. A life neither of them had a say in. Taehyung's throat tightened as he took another step closer, reaching out toward the boy, but he stopped short. The brief moment of empathy flickered and died just as quickly as it came. His fingers curled into a fist, and the anger returned, burning hotter than before. He couldn't do this. He couldn't marry someone he had no connection with, no desire for. He didn't want to be part of this family's legacy anymore. He wanted freedom. Taehyung, Jungkook. Finally, Jungkook's eyes lifted, and Taehyung was caught off guard by the look of vulnerability in his gaze. There were tears, sure, but there was something else, something more desperate, more awe. It was as though he was silently pleading for someone, anyone, to save him from this fate. For a brief moment, Taehyung wondered what it would be like to be in Jungkook's shoes. To have your life planned out for you from the moment you were born. To have your choices stripped away before you even understood what it meant to make a decision. It was a life Taehyung had known all too well. But this boy was different. He wasn't like Taehyung. He wasn't running from the world. He was stuck in it. Taehyung exhaled sharply, shaking his head, as if clearing his mind of the conflicting thoughts that kept surfacing. I can't do this to you, the words slipped out before he could stop them. The confession, the realization, hit him harder than he expected. Jungkook's eyes widened at the words, his hands trembling harder now. But before he could speak, Mrs. Kim's voice cut through the moment. Mrs. Kim, what do you mean, Taehyung? It's already been decided. There is no choice in this matter. We've spent years arranging this. The papers are signed. The guests are here. Taehyung clenched his jaw, his heart pounding in his chest. Taehyung, there is always a choice, mother. He looked back at Jungkook, who was still clutching the bouquet, his eyes wide but still holding the faintest trace of fear. Taehyung took a deep breath, the fire in his gut still burning. Taehyung, I'm not going through with this. I'm not going to ruin your life, Jungkook. The moment his words left his mouth, the tension in the room became palpable. The silence was deafening. Mr. Kim, you'll do what you're told, Taehyung. This is not just about you. This is about the future of our family, our empire. But Taehyung wasn't listening anymore. His thoughts were clouded, his heart heavy. All he could think about was Jungkook, the boy who stood before him, so out of place in his pristine wedding attire, and yet, he was the only one who seemed to understand what was happening. Taehyung wasn't the only one trapped in this life. And maybe, just maybe, they could find a way out of it together. The room was silent as Mr. Kim's cold words hung in the air. Taehyung's heart hammered in his chest, his mind spinning with conflicting thoughts. His father's icy gaze never wavered, but there was something else lurking behind it, something dangerous. Something that told Taehyung that this was not a negotiation. But despite the pressure, despite the weight of his family's legacy, Taehyung stood firm. He couldn't, no, he wouldn't, let himself be trapped in this gilded cage. Not again. Not with Jungkook, and certainly not with the false sense of duty his parents had laid on him like a shroud. He glanced back at Jungkook. The boy was still standing there, clutching the bouquet so tightly that his knuckles were almost white. His expression had shifted from fear to something else, something unreadable, almost like a mask he had put on in an attempt to endure the situation. But the tears were still there, lingering in the corners of his eyes, and that broke something inside Taehyung. Taehyung, I'm not your pawn. His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. He looked at his father, then his mother. His heart burned with frustration. He didn't care anymore about the consequences. He didn't care about the legacy they were trying to force on him. Taehyung, you think this is the answer, don't you? You think forcing me into this marriage will solve everything. But it won't. It will only destroy everything. Jungkook's head snapped up at the sound of Taehyung's voice, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he just stood there, still trembling, his eyes searching Taehyung's face, perhaps for some sign of mercy. Taehyung's gaze softened just for a moment, but it was enough to make him realize that Jungkook was a victim of this just as much as he was. Jungkook, I didn't want this. I didn't choose this. The words were barely above a whisper, but they hit Taehyung like a bullet to the chest. The tremor in Jungkook's voice echoed the very thing Taehyung had been trying to ignore. They were both trapped. Both of them. Taehyung's eyes flickered to his father, then his mother, before settling on the boy in front of him. For the first time since entering the room, Taehyung didn't feel the anger that had consumed him. Instead, there was an overwhelming sense of pity, a bitter realization that this wasn't just a battle between him and his parents. It was a battle against a system, against a tradition that demanded obedience at the expense of everything else. Mr. Kim stepped forward, his gaze hardening, the weight of authority in every move. Mr. Kim, you'll do your duty, Taehyung. This is not negotiable. You will marry Jungkook, and you will continue the legacy. The coldness in his father's voice was a slap to the face. Taehyung's breath caught in his throat as his mind raced. He had never felt this powerless before. This wasn't just about his future, it was about the future of the entire Kim family. His family. But his heart rebelled. He had spent so many years running away from this, trying to escape this very fate, and he wasn't about to let it swallow him whole now. Taehyung, no. I'm not doing this. I won't be a part of this life. Not if it means hurting him. His voice was fierce, raw, as the truth finally spilled out. The very same truth he had been avoiding for so long. He didn't care about his family's empire. He didn't care about their legacy. What he cared about was his freedom, his autonomy, and maybe, just maybe, helping the boy in front of him find his own escape. Jungkook looked up at Taehyung, eyes wide, as if he had never heard such words before. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Taehyung turned toward his parents, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Taehyung, if you think you can manipulate me into this, you're wrong. You want an heir, but I won't be your puppet. I'll leave. I'll walk away from all of this. Mrs. Kim stepped forward, a tremor of concern passing through her. For the first time, she looked uncertain, but she quickly masked it with her usual facade. Mrs. Kim, Taehyung, please. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Taehyung. I'm not making it hard. You are. This was never about love. It was never about family. It was about control. He glanced back at Jungkook, who was still standing there, looking more fragile than ever. His heart clenched. He couldn't let Jungkook suffer because of the decisions his parents had made for him. Taehyung took a deep breath, walking toward Jungkook. The boy's eyes flickered up at him, a mixture of surprise and fear in them. But Taehyung saw something else there too, something that mirrored his own uncertainty. Taehyung, we don't have to do this, Jungkook. You don't have to be a part of this. Jungkook's lips trembled, his hands shaking as he looked down at the bouquet. Jungkook, but what else can I do? If I don't do this, my family will never forgive me. They'll never let me go. Taehyung reached out, gently taking the bouquet from Jungkook's hands, his touch light but firm. Taehyung, then we both walk away. Together. Jungkook stared at him, his eyes wide and vulnerable. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence, the air thick with the tension of the unspoken. Finally, Jungkook nodded, his voice barely a whisper. Jungkook. Together, Taehyung knew that the road ahead would not be easy. It would be filled with challenges, with consequences neither of them could foresee. But for the first time in years, Taehyung felt like he was making the right choice, not for his parents, not for the legacy, but for himself. And for Jungkook. It was time to break free.